it's a physical journey that you're going to take. Let's consider, for instance, you drive to a particular masjid or a particular city because there's a halaqah, there's a conference, there's a visiting scholar. So that journey is a journey to seek knowledge. So that journey counts for you as a virtuous act. And the actual journey, meaning metaphoric journey, that life's journey in seeking knowledge, that also, as long as you have that intention, that also is a virtuous act. But it requires a lot of patience. And it requires also that you always ask Allah Azza wa Jal for steadfastness. Right? Because on your own, you may quit along the journey, right? You may quit because it's difficult. But if you ask Allah for support, Allah Azza wa Jal then will assist you. And ask Allah Azza wa Jal to keep reminding you of the value of what you're doing. And the value of what you will be able to do with it once you're able to get it. Right? And the benefit of it in the hereafter and the benefit of this dunya. And this is how you stay motivated. Otherwise, if you're doing it by yourself, otherwise if you're alone, otherwise, if no one is inspiring you, you're going to quit because it is difficult. It is not easy. Is it easy, for instance, to pick up a book, and it's a serious book, Islamic book, and start reading, beginning to end? Especially today. Is it easy? No. There are a million other things that you would actually rather be doing, or the shaitan will tell you you'd rather be doing. Just like when you start your salah, the shaitan is going to whisper into your heart things outside of the salah to distract you. Once you start with reading, you're going to have a million thoughts, right? Before you develop that discipline, a million thoughts about, let me do this, and then I'll come back. Let me just write this. Let me just text so-and-so. I remembered something. So all these thoughts are going to come into your mind. So you need to, as you in the salah, ask Allah for protection from the shaitan. When you want to begin, ask Allah for protection from the shaitan, and know and try to realize the shaitan's intervention sometimes to try to distract you and derail you. So it does require a serious person to be able to worship Allah Azza wa Jal through this. And he says, فَمَنْ صَبَرَ عَلَى ذَلِكَ التَّعَبْ وَجَدَ لَذَّةَ الْعِلْمِ تَفُوقُ لَذَّاتِ الدُّنْيا. He says, the one who is patient with that effort, with toiling in pursuit of knowledge, will find that the sweetness of knowledge surpasses the sweetness of worldly matters. And that is, to a lot of us, simply theory, or sort of kind of seem like fiction. How is it that actually the sweetness of knowledge and gaining knowledge, specifically Islamic knowledge, but you could say, subhanAllah, also to an extent, it's all types of knowledge. When you learn something new, especially something that solves a problem that you have, or opens up a new field of inquiry, or you say, wow, this is interesting. So he says that sweetness is greater than the sweetness of worldly matters when you attain them. Meaning greater than the sweetness of food, greater than the sweetness of sleep, greater than the sweetness of going out, of shopping, of texting, of buying something new. He says the sweetness of knowledge surpasses all of this. Now when you begin, you're not going to find that sweetness. Why? Because you're used to what? The dunya, this world, right? So you're still addicted to that sweetness. So have you tried to, not that I have, but have you tried to switch from eating sugar to eating less sugar? Right? You tried? Not a lot, right? But anyway, right? When you start doing it, is it easy? No, it's not easy. The food doesn't have a good taste, right? The coffee, the tea, whatever is reduced sugar, you eat it. It says, where's the taste? You still crave what? The sugar. It says, but once you get used to it, that's the persevering. That's the patience. Once you actually keep doing it for a week, for a month, for a few months now, and your tongue gets used to it, if you want to go back to that sugary sweetness that you used to drink and eat, what would you find it? Disgusting. You say, how did I ever eat this? Right? How did I ever eat this? So you transitioned. And so now you will like this new food that you're eating more than that previous one. So that is an experience, and this is a new experience that has surpassed the other one. This is why? Because you were patient. So in the beginning, the dunya will have ladha. So you bring, especially if you're young, especially if you have friends, you tell them, come and sit in the masjid and read Quran. Just like that, right? It's going to be one of the most difficult things to do. Sit, open a book and read. That's one of the most difficult things to do. So you have to create an internal incentive for the person to do this. But if we were to suppose that you're an adult, you recognize what's good for you, what is bad for you, and you try it, and it's difficult in the beginning. If you stay with it, you'll start tasting the sweetness of learning. The sweetness of understanding what you couldn't understand before, and you will look at other activities that used to consume your time as frivolous and dumb. How did I spend my time watching this or talking about these things? I didn't gain anything from it, but now I spend 5 minutes or 10 minutes or half an hour reading a book. Look how much I'm getting. Look how smarter I am. Now the things that used to perplex me before, confused me before about my life, about what I'm supposed to do with it, about how to solve a problem, now I understand. Now I have a solution. Now I feel better. And especially, so he says it will surpass the sweetness of worldly matters. So he quotes here Muhammad ibn al-Hasan. He says when he used to stay up for nights, the scholar, he used to stay up for nights and solve some problems, religious problems, right, through study, intellectual religious problems. He used to say, أين أبناء الملوك من هذه اللذات? He says, where are the sons of kings, the progeny of kings, from fighting over these pleasures? So what does he mean here is that sons of kings or the progeny of kings, what pleasures do they fight over? Dunya. That's what they're looking for, because that's how they grew up. What do they see? They see their father who's a king, he has this power, he has this wealth. So that's why they fight with each other, though they are brothers. But they fight with each other over these types of pleasures. He says to himself, when he experiences ladhatul ilm, the sweetness of understanding, the sweetness of knowledge, he says, how come the children of kings have not figured out the sweetness of these things? How come they did not find? Because if they were actually to find out about it, they would fight us over it because of how sweet it is. Because it's sweeter than, this is what he's saying, it is sweeter than. And he says, especially when you resolve a problem, like in your head, you can't reconcile two things. In your head, you're wondering, right? Especially things that really affect you or affect people that are around you. How is it that Allah Azza wa Jal commanded this? How is it that the Prophet ﷺ did that? Not that you're doubting, but you're trying to understand. And you want to explain it to others, and you think and you think and you think and you can't find an answer, and then, subhanAllah, Allah grants you that answer. From reading, from thinking. Sometimes it comes to you by thinking about it, and Allah opens the gates of guidance, and you figure it out. He says, now, once you grasp that thing, it's as if, subhanAllah, you've eaten, a very wholesome, full meal. It says, this is it, this is beautiful. This is wonderful, because now I understand something about myself, something about my family, something about my spouse, my child, something about Islam, something about the hereafter. But this, of course, requires that you spend time with it, and you also see the value of it. See the value of what you're learning, because any worldly things, right, that you learn, as valuable as they are, they stop here. But religious things that you learn, they benefit you here, and they continue with you. They continue with you till the day of judgment. And so they say about so-and-so that he saw his sheikh in a dream. He said, the fatwa that you've given on that particular day, that reward of that fatwa reached me. What does that mean? It means that the sheikh taught him something. And that his sheikh passed away. So that sheikh, this new sheikh who's still alive, the student who became a sheikh, was giving the fatwa. So his late sheikh came to him in the dream and he says, that reward of that fatwa reached me. Because you taught it. So that could be you. You don't need to be necessarily a sheikh, but you can have some knowledge, some ilm, and you share it with someone and you forget about it. Right? And you die. And then that person continues to apply it or teaches it to another person, and you're getting that reward. So that's the ladha of ilm, because it stays with you and you know that you really have done something lasting, meaningful, magnificent. right? Rather than wasting your life. So this is the ladha there. You do it and you say, subhanAllah, I've learned something here that is really of value. So he says, وَيَنْبَغِي لِطَالِبِ الْعِلْمِ, he says the seeker of knowledge should really concentrate on seeking knowledge and not be distracted by something else. Meaning like stay focused. So the more serious you are, the more focused you are, the more that you're going to get. And he quotes Muhammad ibn al-Hasan, he says, صِنَاعَتُنَا هَذِهِ مِنَ الْمَهْدِ إِلَى اللَّحْدِ. He says, this work of ours, this pursuit of ours is from the cradle to the grave. فَمَنْ أَرَادَ أَنْ يَتْرُكَ عِلْمَنَا هَذِهِ السَّاعَةِ أو هذا ساعة فليتركه الساعة. If you want to leave this pursuit of knowledge for an hour, okay, there's a play on words here. You want to leave it for an hour, let him leave it this hour. Meaning that stop immediately. That if in your intention, I'm going to be doing some and then pausing, doing some and pausing, doing some and pausing, he's saying to himself, no, just stop already. Stop already, because you really are not serious about it. No, he says what? He says you need to keep on it. You need to keep doing it. Now, of course, I don't want you to take this to despair and say, well, sometimes I'm intermittent in my pursuit seeking knowledge. Sometimes I do it, sometimes I stop. Sometimes I have energy, sometimes I don't have energy. It means I should leave it all together. No, he's not saying this for you to despair and say, just that's it, I'm just going to leave everything. He's saying it to motivate and to stress the fact that it should be continuous. Because if it's not continuous, you're not going to be able to get the most out of it. You'll get some, and then you'll pause, and you'll forget, and you'll come back. So you'll continue to what? Be in the same place. So he says, no, be serious about it, because it's supposed to be a lifelong pursuit. So you're not going to stop. But if you happen to be that type of person who either does not have a lot of time, that's fine. Seek it whenever you can. Never give up. Seek it whenever you can, and ask Allah Azza wa Jal. If you find yourself that sometimes you lack motivation, ask Allah for that motivation. Simply. He said, look, this hour, today, I just don't have the energy to do this. Fine. Consider it a day of rest, but ask Allah Azza wa Jal for motivation. Ask Him for support so that you can come back to it. And maybe also investigate, why is it that when you were in a better mood, why is it that today you weren't really able to read, weren't able to do something productive? What happened? And sometimes upon investigation, you'll find out something, maybe I've done something wrong. If you can trace it, I've done something wrong. I committed a sin. I suspected that sin. And that sin influenced my mood and influenced my pursuit of knowledge. So go back and ask Allah for forgiveness for it. So if you're able to track it back to a particular bad thing that you have done, and sometimes a bad thought that you may have had, you'll be able to cleanse yourself quicker and come back to pursuing knowledge. So he says, this is from the cradle to the grave. Right? So it doesn't matter, and we're going to come to, inshallah, the next chapter. We're going to be talking about, the next chapter. He's talking about that there is no end time except death for pursuit of knowledge. So he gives here an example. He says somebody came to visit Abu Yusuf, and all of these are Hanafi scholars. Said that before. And he used to. So he came to visit Abu Yusuf. Abu Yusuf was on his deathbed, and he was just his soul is it's in the process of leaving his body. Not yet. He's not dying yet. He can still talk, but along the way or on the way of dying. So Abu Yusuf, he told him, asked that person, رَمْيُ الْجِمَارِ رَاكِبًا أَفْضَلُ أَمْ رَاجِلًا. So he used to ask him, he says, throwing the pebbles, right, in Hajj. So throwing the pebbles, is it better to do it on foot or on an animal? Right? So is it better to do it like this, or is it better to do it that? So that person did not know the answer. So Abu Yusuf gave this answer himself. Right? Of course, that question to us today is not relevant, right? But at one point you could do that. You can either ride an animal or you can, be on foot. But the benefit of that story is what? Is that still till the end, he was what? Learning or teaching. Till the very end, he is learning and teaching. So you think to yourself, well, what's the benefit of this? Because till the last breath, either I can learn something which will help me, or teach something which will also help me. So as long as there is an opportunity for a person to do something that's good, you seize it. Right? You seize it. And they become most precious, of course, when you know that you're leaving. Yeah, when you know that you're leaving, that's when they become the most precious. But now that you have so many of them, subhanAllah, of those moments, try to take advantage of so many of them, right? So not to waste so many, but advantage of as many of them as possible. And he's not the only person. He's not the only person. There are other scholars on their deathbed. Somebody comes and they will ask him, did you hear about this hadith? Meaning that, can you narrate this hadith to me or narrate that tradition to me? And they'll ask him, till when? You mean on your deathbed and you still, are seeking and eager to learn? And he says, yes, it will still the end, because this maybe لعل الكلمة التي أستفيد منها لم أسمعها أو كما قال. Maybe the sentence that is going to benefit me, I did not hear yet. Huh? You understand? And maybe the sentence that will help me, that will benefit me, I did not hear yet. Yeah, and maybe same thing with sadaqah, with charity, with good word. Maybe the sadaqah that's going to save me from hellfire, I did not pay yet. Maybe the good word that I'm going to say to save me from hellfire, I didn't say yet. So you do not belittle any small thing. You say, what is $1 going to do? What's an extra hadith going to do? What is, an extra good word is going to do? What is it going to do? But maybe it is this thing, that it's going to be on top of all your other good deeds that are going to take you to Jannah. So you don't know. So if it's not going to harm you, and it's not, it will benefit you, inshallah. So try to seize it. It says, وَهَكَذَا يَنْبَغِي لِلْفَقِيهِ. He says, so the faqih, the scholar, has to occupy all of his times with that type of pursuit, noble pursuit, and he will find a lot of pleasure in doing so. وَقَدْ قِيلَ أَنَّهُ قَالَ فِي آخِرِ عُمُرِهِ. It is said that he had said towards the end of his time, شغلتني مسائل المكاتب عن الاستعداد لهذا اليوم. He says, I was distracted by the matters or questions about al-mukatab. Al-mukatab is the slave who goes to his owner and he says, I want to be freed, I'm going to pay you back for it. So his owner tells him, go ahead and earn money and pay me back and you're free. Right? So he pays him back whatever he had paid. So this is al-mukatab. So it's an issue in fiqh. So he says, I was distracted by that from getting ready for this day, meaning for visit, coming back to Allah Azza wa Jal, or the day of death. And he says, وَإِنَّمَا قَالَ ذَلِكَ تَوَاضُعًا. He says, maybe he said that out of humility. Out of humility. So it's a possibility that Abu Yusuf rahimahullah, he had said this out of humility, that I should have, if I had known, I would not have spent so much time on this. But he says, of course, he benefited a lot of people with whatever he had taught, whatever he had learned. So of course he was saying this out of humility. So that's a possibility. Or the other possibility is Abu Yusuf rahimahullah has realized, he says, I spent too much time on these matters, on too many details related to that matters, whereas if I spent my time on something else more significant, that would have been even better for my today. So this, if you can take from it a lesson, would be that whatever you are learning, you want to ask yourself, why am I learning it? Because sometimes there is this shahwa, there is this desire when you want to learn, of learning something new. Just I want to learn, right? I want to just learn something new. Especially if it is, as we said before, if it is odd, strange, controversial, nobody had heard about it before. So there is this shahwa that you have. I want to just learn this and I want to learn that. And that is, at least you have a desire to learn. That is good. But then you ask yourself, what am I applying this for? What is this for? So if it is of little benefit, it's such a minute, irrelevant matter, of little benefit in the akhirah and also of little benefit in the dunya, why are you learning it and spending time on it? So occupy yourself with what is most beneficial, most helpful. And that was a smart seeker of knowledge would do. Because the paths, the roads are plenty and all of them are open. You can study so many different things, and within each discipline you can study even more things within each discipline. There are roads within the roads, paths within the paths. So which one should I study? He says, the one that you need. What is it that you need? And that's what you need to find out. At this moment, I need to learn about salah. That's what I'm going to study about salah. Not about the signs of the Day of Judgment. right? I mean, you may not never see that, right? I know they're interesting and there's a lot of benefit in them, but Salah or signs of Day of Judgment? Salah or Ad-Dajjal? Huh? Salah first, then learn about Ad-Dajjal. Make the Dajjal the reward, right? After you learn about Salah, I'm going to reward myself by learning about Ad-Dajjal because it's interesting. But at least learn about what you're going to apply today. Learn about what your spouse needs. Learn about what your kids need. Learn about your zakah, the things that you need to do to know at this moment. Learn about how to fix your heart. Learn about, okay, I have a disease. You know what diseases you have. I skip the salah, I'm not regular with it, I suspect people, I'm envious, I'm arrogant. Learn about those things and how to fix them. That is your priority. That's what's going to help you. And then later on, learn about everything else if it's interesting. But at least you've taken care of the basics. And keep in mind that ask yourself always, what's the benefit of what I'm learning? Now, and then we move on to the next chapter, and he says, this is, what is the time for acquiring knowledge? When do you, the acquisition of knowledge, when does it begin? When does it end? Okay, and as we said, it has no beginning. There's no beginning time. As soon as you can start, you start. And it goes all the way till death, till the moment of death. That is it. That's what we say, from the cradle to the grave. Okay? So you keep learning, and you never stop learning, and you'll never stop learning until you die. So you're always learning something, and you never say to yourself, I know enough about this. Never say that. I know enough about this. Because as we said, وَفَوْقَ كُلِّ ذِي عِلْمٍ عَلِيمٍ, there is always one more knowledgeable than you. And Allah Azza wa Jal is above everybody else. So you can always learn something about that topic. Even if you consider yourself to be an expert in it, you'll always find something to learn. So you never say, I learned enough about this. You've never learned enough. If you think that you know enough, then that is a sign that you what? Don't know much or don't know anything, right? So when you say to yourself, there's a lot more to learn and I don't know enough, that is a sign of maturity, a sign of knowledge. So he says, from the cradle to the grave. And he says here, he's talking about Hasan ibn Ziyad. The following sentence is something kind of seems inaccurate in it or doesn't add up. Started tafaqquh, or he started learning when he was 80, and then he did not sleep at night for 40 years, and then he gave fatwa for 40 years. So if you're just going to add it up like this, it's going to be that he lived till 160, or that it's just there's something not right about that statement. But what we can take from it is what? Even if you are 80, even if you're 80, you don't say it's too late for me, right? Why isn't it late if you're 80 to seek knowledge? Why? You're still alive. Huh? You can do something. You can meet Allah Azza wa Jal. Suppose that you're going to meet Allah Azza wa Jal. You're 80 at this moment. You're going to meet Allah when you're 85. Or maybe 90, let's say. And you can spend those 5 years, right? Let's say that you're able to memorize the Quran. Isn't it better to meet Allah while have memorized the Quran than not? Yeah? Absolutely. Maybe not memorization. Maybe memorization, for me at that age is going to be difficult. But that's fine. But I'm reading the tafsir of the Quran and I'm understanding what Allah is saying. And that is helping secure and increase my iman. Isn't it better that I meet Allah like that rather than meet Him ignorant? Right? Does that not increase my chances of my sins being forgiven and entering Jannah? And maybe perhaps Allah Azza wa Jal, it's a possibility Allah will facilitate that I could teach somebody those things. A family member, a neighbor, or somebody I see in the masjid, they're doing something wrong, I correct it. I now have taught somebody something. Okay? And that becomes something that they keep applying and teaching it to other people. So there is a lot of barakah in continuing to learn. So even if you're 80, it doesn't really matter. Because you don't know, as we said, if the thing that is going to help you, if the thing that's going to benefit you has been learned or not. So a person never gives up on learning. And he says here, the best times to learn are early adulthood, meaning when you're young, وَوَقْتُ السَّحَرِ, the last part of the night before dawn, وَمَا بَيْنَ الْعِشَاءَيْنِ, between Maghrib and Isha. قال وينبغي أن يستغرق جميع أوقاته. He says it should, seeking knowledge should take up most of your time. Okay, I understand. We're not full-time seekers of knowledge, but a significant amount of your time, or be dedicated enough that you're giving it a good portion of your day. If it's half an hour, be dedicated and say half an hour, but at least it's half an hour. If it's an hour, say an hour of reading, an hour of studying, and it will add up. But he's talking here about the full-timers. So he said it should occupy most of his time. And he has really a very good advice here. فَإِذَا مَلَّ مِنْ عِلْمٍ يَشْتَغِلُ بِعِلْمٍ آخَرٍ. He says if you get tired with one discipline, with one branch of knowledge, you move on to another discipline and to another branch. He says, كان ابن عباس إذا مل من الكلام. Ibn Abbas, if he get tired of talking, bored with it, right? Like sitting, let's say, teaching and teaching and teaching. He would say, what? هاتوا ديوان الشعراء. Bring the poetry of the poets. Bring poetry and let's read poetry. So here you begin to understand that you are a human being who is going to get tired. So I'm reading hadith, let's say. I'm studying hadith. And my capacity is, some people can do it for hours, let's say. But my capacity is an hour. After an hour, I get tired and bored. I can't continue. I'm not absorbing anything anymore. I need a rest. So what am I going to rest doing? So he says, if you don't plan, then yourself is going to take you where? You wander into where? At least distracting, at least it's other distractions or the haram maybe. Because you don't have a plan. Okay, you know that you're going to get bored, right? You know yourself. I know myself. I know I'm going to get bored. You know you're going to get bored. After an hour, after half an hour, okay, what's your plan? No, you know that you're going to get hungry in an hour. You don't have a plan? You have a plan, right? I went to the grocery store, I bought stuff, right? I've stocked up the fridge. I know why do you stock up the fridge? I know I'm gonna need. I'm gonna eat breakfast, lunch or dinner, maybe not lunch, breakfast, at least dinner. So something, right? So okay, so what is your plan? Because this is your nourishment intellectually and spiritually. This is it. Okay, so I'm gonna get bored with this. I need something else. What's the other book? The other discipline that is gonna refresh you, is going to energize you, something that is not as serious. Something that is not as serious. So this is what Ibn Abbas said. After studying hadith or teaching Quran or doing this, after some time, that's it. The nafs gets tired. Okay? Then now what? He says he likes poetry. He says, bring poetry and let's read poetry. And there's benefit in it. There's benefit in it. What's the benefit in poetry? But through understanding Arabic poetry, you'll be able to understand the Quran better. You'll be understand the Sunnah better. You'll reform your tongue. You'll learn wisdom. A lot of benefits in it. But then just find for yourself what is the thing that interests you. Even if you want to read, subhanAllah, any halal fiction, that's fine. I finished this, I'm going to read something, fiction, but there's some benefit in it. But at least it's not haram. And at least I'm learning something, and at least I'm getting more energy, so that in an hour or so I can go back and do something else. Just find out what is the thing that you need to do and plan ahead, right? Naam, and he quotes Muhammad ibn al-Hasan again. He says he did not used to sleep the nights. You don't have to do that, but some people used to do this. He did not used to sleep at night, and he would put, the books right next to him. So if he would get bored with one discipline, he would consider another discipline. So if you could bored with fiqh, you could move on to hadith. You get bored with hadith, you could move on to history, right? If you get bored with history, you move on to something else, and so on, so that the self remains interested. And he says, وَكَانَ يَضَعُ عِنْدَهُ الْمَاءِ. He says he used to store some water right next to him. And if he gets sleepy, he would just wash his face with water. And he says, this removes sleep, meaning it helps him to stay up. So again, you don't have to necessarily believe that this is a must. You need to stay up all night and never sleep. That may not be possible or advisable for a lot of us. No, if you need to sleep, sleep. but at least we were saying at a as a beginning, give yourself the opportunity to study every single day and commit to it. Now, so moving on to the next chapter. This is في الشفقة والنصيحة. This is caring for others and giving advice, being advice. He says the knowledgeable person, this is part of the akhlaq of the knowledgeable person. So we talked before about the fact that when you have knowledge, it's not simply information. We're not storing information, right? It's like studying to get a job. Studying Islam, it's not like studying to get a job. It's like studying to do what? To improve, to be better, and to go to Jannah. You're not going to go to Jannah by just simply memorizing. And you meet Allah. It's not like the person who had memorized the Quran. It's not like the person who had memorized the entire Quran, just like a computer, and then Allah Azza wa Jal on the Day of Judgment will come and say, "Iqra wartaq," meaning read, recite, and be elevated simply for the act of memorization. Right? Is it just memorization? No, right? Because that doesn't help. It's when you memorize it and you apply it. Because what happens if you memorize and you contradict it? Huh? That's very bad, because now you know, but that thing that you know condemns you. That thing you recite it, but it's condemning you. And you can't say, I didn't know. You memorized it. Absolutely. You have to take it and you have to implement it. So this is Qari'ul Quran. Qari'ul Quran is the one who memorized it and he applies it. So the same thing with the Sunnah. It's not just I'm learning hadith, memorizing hadith. Then what? What are you going to do with it? Or this book. I'm just reading this book. And then what? And it's telling you this book. It's telling you need to avoid this bad habit and avoid this bad character. And you memorize it and you read it and you say yes, yes, yes. And it's in you. And yes, yes. And it's in you. That doesn't work. Right? No, you need to take it and you need to change it. Apply yourself. So apply it. So here when he says, ينبغي أن يكون مشفقا ناصحا غير حاسد. You have to care for people. ناصحا, giving them advice. غير حاسد, not envious. فالحسد يضر ولا ينفع. Envy hurts you and doesn't benefit you. So if you have envy in us, and by the way, this is human to be what? Envious. It's impossible to point to a human being, right? We're going to exclude the prophets of Allah Azza wa Jal, but it's not possible to point to a human being and say, he doesn't know what envy is. Not possible. You're always going to envy someone because you're always going to look at somebody else who had done something, said something. And by the way, envy is something interesting because it just depends on what matters to you. What matters to you. So if it matters to you is cars, let's say, right? And not academic achievement, let's say, as an example. So I don't know, a triple PhD could be sitting right next to you, and he says, I have triple PhD. You say, yeah, fine, I don't care. Because you don't care about academic achievement. But somebody who's sitting next to you, I say, I bought a new car. You say, wow, yeah, what is it? I need to go out and see it. Because that's what matters. And you're going to envy him for that, not for the other thing. So that's what's interesting about envy. It's not the same for everybody. You're going to envy for what matters for you. And somebody in your own field, somebody in your own discipline. So if you hear about somebody else in a different type of discipline who achieved something, you may not care. But a colleague of yours who had achieved something you couldn't or did not yet, you're going to envy him. Right? Somebody older than you did something, or younger, not younger, older than you, did something great, that's okay. Somebody same age or younger did something that you couldn't do, what? That's envy. So he says, this also is in ilm, by the way. In ilm, you're going to be envious. You're starting a book, you're starting a surah, having such a hard time memorizing it. Somebody else comes and, in a day he finishes the whole thing. Oh, that's it. Absolutely. Because why does he say that envy hurts and does not benefit? Because what are you doing is, you're hurting yourself. You're not hurting the other person. It's sinful to envy, And now you're looking at them and you're questioning why they have what you do not have. And it has not helped you in any way. But rather if you say, well, wait a second, I'm being envious. He knows more than I am. And he's younger and this and that, but he knows more than I am. Rather than being envious, make dua for them. Be happy for them that Allah Azza wa Jal had enabled them to do something, and that your objective and their objective should be the same, which is what? Helping the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because why are you learning this? After you're saving yourself, right? We said, Izalatul Jahli an nafsi, that you save yourself from ignorance. But also, why are you learning it? You want to help the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the people around. So this person who is knowledgeable, who knows more than you, isn't he also doing the same thing? So if your objective is the same, you shouldn't envy him. But if my objective is my own glory, then that's different. Okay? And it's easy to say, no, I don't want any glory, I don't want any praise. No. All of us want glory, all of us want praise. All of us. And we enjoy it. We feed off it. So you have now to say what? No, I shouldn't care about it. I shouldn't. This is how you treat yourself. I shouldn't care about it. I shouldn't care. I seek Allah's protection from it. I seek Allah's protection from it. It's not good for me. It is bad for me. And to keep saying this to yourself and educating yourself on what constitutes envy and how you can rid yourself of it, then you'll get rid of it. So he is saying here that this is how you are supposed to be. Caring for others, giving them advice, taking care of them, not envious of them. This is how knowledge is supposed to elevate you, not demean you. Right? So some people, subhanAllah, and this is why it's important, they learn, meaning information, but no adab with it. No adab. So that their akhlaq are terrible. And when they discuss a matter with you, they're terrible. And you want to run away. Yeah, of course, right? I mean, you start hurting. As he said, you start hurting when you talk to them. You want to run away. Even though they're talking about religious matters. But their akhlaq are terrible. You say, well, no, I don't want this. You just want to run away because that's not the type of person I want to be, and that you're not the type of person I want to talk to. So there's this divorce between adab and learning. No, they need to be together. And as we said before, if you find that your information, your knowledge that you are acquiring is not helping your akhlaq, is something wrong. There's something wrong in what you are learning and how you are learning it. So you need to take a step back and reconsider. Maybe you shouldn't be focused on this, focus on something else, or whatever you are learning, you're really not learning it right and not applying it to yourself. So he brings here the example of someone as a teacher. He says, جَعَلَ وَقْتَ السَّبْقِ لِإِبْنَيْهِ وَقْتَ الضَّحْوَةِ الْكُبْرَى, meaning that he used to teach kids, and he had children. So he used to teach the children of other people and delay teaching his kids, till close to Dhuhr time. So they would start teaching from after Fajr. And he'll delay his children till about close to Dhuhr time, Dhahwa al-Kubra. So they came to their father and they said, so our nature, can't wait, like our energy. We don't have energy to wait till that time. إِنَّ طَبِيعَتَنَا تَكِلُّ وَتَمَلُّ فِي ذَلِكَ الْوَقْتِ. We get tired and bored when you want to teach us close to Dhuhr time. That's close to the end. So we have energy in the beginning. Waiting all the way to the end, we don't have energy for it. Why don't you give us the earlier times? So his father said, he says, strangers and people coming from distant lands and sons of dignitaries, meaning other people, not my children, other people are coming to learn from me from distant areas. So I must honor them, and I must honor their journey. So I will teach them first, and then I'll teach you. So he comments and he says, because he cared so much about the children of other people, without neglecting his children, but because he cared so much about other people's children, he gave them their favorite time, Allah Azza wa Jal blessed the education of his children. And they also became scholars. So he brought this example. Why? So that he says, shafaqa wa hirs, that you care for other people. You care about them. You care that enough that you want to teach them and you want to rescue them from ignorance and teach them the book of Allah Azza wa Jal. So that type of care is what is supposed to characterize the teacher, especially the Islamic teacher. Okay, so the image of the Islamic teacher being a disciplinarian and very rough and with a stick, that's That's not how it's supposed to be, right? That's just a traditional or a cultural thing. There has to be shafaqah, in care for the students. And he says here, وَيَنْبَغِي, and these, by the way, we mentioned before, these manners that we were talking about are not exclusive to seeking knowledge. Even a person is not a seeker of knowledge, you'll find benefit in them. So like the following here, وَيَنْبَغِي أَلَّا يُنَازِعَ أَحَدًا وَلَا يُخَاصِمَهُ لِأَنَّهُ يُضَيِّعُ أَوْقَاتَهُ. He says, and he is supposed not to quarrel with people and fight with them, because this wastes your time. So he's saying what? And this applies to everybody, but especially for seekers of knowledge, talabatul ilm. He says your time is precious. So don't waste it fighting with people. Don't waste it fighting with people. And sometimes, these types of fights, well, not necessarily physical fights, but quarrels and arguments, they could be, between people who are learning, they start arguing with each other, and then arguing, and the objective or what they want to achieve from it is not the pleasure of Allah. It's not something useful, but I want to win. And I don't want him to win. I want to defeat him. So they keep arguing and arguing and arguing. And these arguments escalate. They start small, and they escalate and escalate and escalate until the two people are cursing each other. And although it started as a religious discussion or a religious argument, they start cursing each other. Okay? And that is a characteristic of people who are arguing not for the sake of learning, not for the sake of teaching, but for the sake of winning. And also without akhlaq, without adab, but they let their own desire, their own nafs, control them. So I want to win. I can't let him win. But rather, the person is supposed to engage in a discussion whenever that discussion is useful. If it's not, he moves on. As قيل المحسن سيجزى بإحسانه والمسيء ستكفيه مساويه. He says, the one who does good, he will be rewarded for the good that he has done, and the one who has done evil, that evil will be his recompense and his reward. Right? This clarifies it. The next verse of poetry. He says, لا تجزي إنسانا على سوء فعله سيكفيه ما فيه وما هو فاعله. He says, don't punish someone for an evil that he has done. It's enough for him what he has done and what he is doing. And don't occupy yourself with trying to punish people for the wrong that they have done. Right? Because this is going to just waste a lot of your time and a lot of your energy. Even as a layperson, you don't even consider yourself a seeker of knowledge, I'm just listening to this, that's fine. Is this also valuable for everybody? He says, if you just occupy your time, and it's dominated by, I want to punish so-and-so, and this person, and that person, it's like at the end of your day, I said, this person did this bad thing to me, and this person said this bad thing to me. Next day, I'm planning how to punish them and avenge myself, right? Right? He says, don't worry about all of these things. لا تجزي إنسانا على سوء فعله. Don't worry about it, because the evil that he has done, that's enough of a punishment for him. And anyway, whatever he has done is going to come back to bite him, going to come back to hurt him. So you don't need really to spend energy on him. You don't really need to spend energy on it. As they say, he's digging his own hole with his hand, digging his grave with his hand. Let him, make dua for him. If you want Allah to save him, right? Don't worry about it, because don't worry about punishing him. Don't worry about getting your rights back. Forget about it, because Allah Azza wa Jalla is going to send something or someone that will take care of him. But you focus on what is beneficial. And that's why he says here in two verses of poetry that follow, إذا شئت أن تلقى عدوك راغما وتقتله غما وتحرقه هما فرم للعلا وازدد من العلم إنه من ازداد علما زاد حاسده غما. He says, if you want to punish your enemy, you really want to punish your enemy and make him regretful and make him, like burn him alive, in a saying, with distress, burn him with distress. He says, excel, do your best to excel and increase yourself of knowledge, because when he sees that you have excelled, he's going to be distressed because of it. Then, so in a sense, he's saying what? If you have an enemy and if you really want to make your enemy sad, be better. Be a better person. Okay? Achieve better. Okay? Okay? Now, of course, I mean, don't say to yourself, I want to achieve better just so that I could show everybody else, how better I am, right? I want them to look at me with envy. I want to put their noses, drag their noses in the mud whenever they see I have this degree and I talk to so and so, and that's not a good intention too, right? That's not, because what do you want? What's your goal here? I want them to see and be disappointed with themselves. See me and envy me. That's not a good intention. You're still in rivalry with other people. But rather what you take from it is that don't really bother with them. Don't bother. If you still have that in you, right? That desire to, I want to punish them. He said, okay, you want to punish? Okay, the best way to punish someone is what? An enemy of yours who wants to bring you down. That's what their intention is, right? Somebody who insults you or somebody who attacks you. What do they want to do? Destroy you, bring you down. Okay, raise yourself up. You're doing the opposite of what your enemy wants. And throughout the way, you're going to learn not to look at your enemies anymore. Because it's not really healthy, right? To always keep looking. Are they watching? Do they know what I've done? Do they know how great I am? And that's really not healthy. But rather, you start doing for the sake of the thing that you want to doing it, right? Yeah.
At that point, like if someone's really angry you to the point where it gets to a point where you feel uncomfortable, you always instead, whenever you say things, you let them finish and say good things about them.
Right. You don't repay evil with evil. Don't repay, but rather suppress evil. Yeah. So don't repay evil with evil, but rather neglect that evil, right? And do what benefits you. Because when you keep rising, you're going to rise above that foolishness, right? So he says, that's what he says. عليك أن تشتغل بمصالح نفسك لا بقهر عدوك. He says you have to occupy yourself, concentrate on what benefits you, not about how to defeat your enemy. Because if you benefit yourself, you really have defeated your enemy. So that's what it is. Right? So that idea of revenge, that idea about revenge, about I want to see something bad happening to my enemy. Okay, that's really not healthy, and that's really not something that you should concentrate on. But rather, somebody did something bad to you, try to go beyond it, move beyond it. And if there's still you have these feelings inside of you, you say, I'm going to better myself. And when you better yourself, you definitely have moved beyond whatever that person was trying to do. So just move beyond it. And he says here also something very beneficial. He says, وَإِيَّاكَ وَالْمُعَادَةِ. Beware of hostilities. Feeding hostilities. You're not going to start quarrels and arguments and fights with people. You're not. But you may respond. So he says, beware of hostility. فَإِنَّهَا تَفْضَحُكَ. I'll explain it. It's going to disgrace you and waste your time. وَعَلَيْكَ بِالتَّحَمُّلِ. But be tolerant, especially with the foolish. So he says, well, you're going to meet someone, okay? You're going to meet plenty of different types of people. Some of them are going to be foolish. So he said, don't, okay, nurture any hostility. Don't allow hostilities with them. Why? He says, فَإِنَّهَا تَفْضَحُكَ. It's going to disgrace you and waste your time. Wasting your time is easy. We understand how it's going to waste your time. What does he mean that it's going to disgrace you? That's if you are talking with someone who's foolish, okay, and out of anger you give him an insult. What is he going to do? He's going to give you 10 insults. Exactly. You're feeding a monster. So one insult, he's going to give you 10 insults. You give him 10 insults, that's it. He takes you outside the masjid, outside the home, and just, starts a slapping competition, right? So he says, if he's foolish, don't stoop to his level, because it's going to only aggravate the situation. It's going to disgrace you. So if you want to maintain your dignity, right? So it's the same thing as they say, for instance, if there's a dog who's barking at you, what do? Okay? Don't bark, right? Nobody barks back at a dog, right? And then it's a barking competition between you and the dog, and who can go faster and louder, and until he's going to win, right? The dog is going to win, right? With barking. Sahih? Why? Because We're not designed to do that. We can imitate, but that's not what we do. So if you happen not to be foolish, but there's another person who's foolish, an expert at foolishness, don't compete in foolishness with them, all right? Just let them be. So don't beware of hostilities. So in your mind, in your heart, always, your intent is, I want to, whenever I am, suppress evil. Yeah, in the grocery store, you're going to meet a foolish person. While parking, you've heard of people fighting over parking spots? Okay. If somebody wants to park in this, park, for God's sake, just park and go on and find another parking. Why are you fighting over this? That's what feeding that hostility. You're at that moment, maybe otherwise those people are smart and intelligent and wise, but that moment, they're foolish. So you don't want to counter foolishness with foolishness. So no, it is my spot. I'm making a statement right now, all right, that this is mine. I'm moving here, building, something here. I'm just, just move on. So if you're going to engage in a quarrel with a foolish person, it's just going to be your own downfall. And let me just finish, inshallah, then we can have a time for questions. So it's just going to be your downfall for that. He says, especially with the foolish, and it's going to, so tolerate. You got to be tolerant. So if someone is having a very bad day, or someone is foolish and he says something bad or does something bad, tolerate. Exactly, he may not mean it. It's a bad time for him, right? Okay, just tolerate it and suppress evil and move on, and then you've won and he won too, because you've saved him too. And he says, وَأُنْشِدْتُ لِبَعْضِهِمْ شِعْرًا. He says, I've heard poetry for some people are saying, it says, بَلَوْتُ النَّاسَ قَرْنًا بَعْدَ قَرْنٍ وَلَمْ أَرَ غَيْرَ خَتَّالٍ وَقَالٍ. He says, I've experienced people one generation after another, and I've only seen a trickster and a hater, meaning that he's saying that I've experienced a lot of people. And a lot of people that I've experienced are either khattal, somebody who tries to cheat you and trick you, or qali, who's going to hate you. And he says, وَلَمْ أَرَى فِي الْخُطُوبِ أَشَدَّ وَقْعًا وَأَصْعَبَ مِنْ مُعَادَاةِ الرِّجَالِ. And he says, among all difficulties that I've seen and encountered, I haven't seen anything more difficult than the hostilities of men. وَذُقْتُ مَرَارَةَ الْأَشْيَاءِ طُرًّا. And he says, I've tasted the bitterness of many things, or all things. وَمَا ذُقْتُ أَمَرَّ مِنَ السُّؤَالِ. And I did not taste something more bitter than asking for a favor. Right? So here the benefit, and of course, verses of poetry have some wisdom in them, but not everything that they say is necessarily true. But what he's saying is that, I experienced all people, and in his experience, what people I've seen was either someone who's trying to trick you or somebody who hates you. So he's saying that is common. You're going to find that. But the more two important verses are the ones who follow that. One, Mu'adat al-Rijal, he says that one of the most difficult things to experience is the hostilities of men. Somebody who hates you, somebody who wants to harm you. He says that is very hard, especially when that person is an enemy of yours. That is very hard. So don't let it reach that level where that person really wants to harm you. Physical harm, or even reputation-wise, right? He really wants to harm you. So sometimes if there is that type of foolishness, if you know him, capable of doing something like this, try to suppress evil as much as you can, right? And he says, and there was nothing more bitter than the bitterness of asking for a favor. Because there, in a sense, you are begging someone for help. Please help me with this. Please help me with that. So he's saying, and as much as you can, right? As much as you can, try to avoid asking for favors. This is what he's saying. Sometimes you have to. Sometimes you have to. But he's saying, avoid asking for favors. And he says, وَإِيَّاكَ أَن تَظُنَّ بِالْمُؤْمِنِ سُوءًا. And never suspect a believer. And without any reason, suspect or think the worst of a believer. فَإِنَّهُ مَنْشَأُ الْعَدَاوَةِ وَلَا يَحِلُّ ذَلِكَ. He says, because this is the seed of hostilities. And how do hostilities begin? Is with bad thoughts and bad suspicion. I'm thinking the worst of him, has done this or said that because of bad reasons. He says, this is how hostilities start. وَإِنَّمَا يَنْشَأُ ذَلِكَ مِنْ خُبْثِ النِّيَّةِ وَسُوءِ السَّرِيرَةِ. It says, and this is the origin of it. Where does it come from when you have these bad thoughts? خُبْثُ النِّيَّة, having a bad intention, وَسُوءُ السَّرِيرَةِ, and a bad interior. So a bad interior here, that the heart okay, is moving with hatred, is moving with hostility, is moving with evil, any type of evil. It says because there is something bad on the inside, you suspect others on the outside. So he's saying, and there's a piece of poetry here that really is important because it tells you something. But before I go to it, he says, you cannot suspect a believer without any justification. Okay? Well, actually, let me read that verse of poetry and then go back and explain it. It says, المتنبي, he says, إذا ساء فعل المرء ساء ظنونه وصدق ما يعتاده من توهم وعاد محبه بقول عداته وأصبح في ليل من الشك مظلم. He says, when a person's actions are evil, then his thoughts are evil or his suspicions are evil. And he believes what he is used to of suspicion. So what does he mean by this? He says that if what you do is bad, okay, your suspicions also are going to be bad. Your suspicions reflect your actions, right? And you will believe whatever imaginations, whatever you suspect or imagine about somebody else, you'll start believing it as well. Like what, for instance? If a person is a thief, okay, he believes that everybody is what? Thieves. Okay, that's proven. Like if you're a person who steals, because that's the thing that you do, and you understand that motivation. If you see somebody taking money out of somewhere, you'll say, he must be stealing it too. Because this is what you do. The first thing that comes to your mind is what you do. Okay? If talking to, a lady, let's say, right? And you are used to talking to ladies the haram way, right? If you see that, he says what? He must be doing something bad. Why? Because that's what you do. That's the natural. Naturally, that's what comes. That's what I would be doing, right? So that's what comes to your mind. So إذا ساء فعل المرء ساء ظنونه. It says when your actions are evil, your suspicions will follow, because this is exactly what you are doing. That's the first thing that is going to come to your mind. Plus, the person who does that evil, he wants everybody to do it. He believes everybody does it. So that's why sometimes, not all the time, when you hear somebody who says, well, everybody steals. Why? This is what you believe. Because this is what you do. And this is what you want it to be. Because you don't want to say, I'm the only person who steals. Right? It's not, then you're the only guilty one? No. Everybody steals, one way or another. Right? So if that way, that you remove guilt. And you become, at least not as bad as you think you are. So he says, if your actions are bad, your suspicions are bad, and you believe whatever you imagine, وَعَادَ مُحِبِّيهِ, and he'll turn against his loved ones because of what his enemies are telling him. So if there's any gossip, he'll believe that gossip immediately. And he'll break relations with his friends, with his family members, with loved ones, just simply based on suspicion. I heard so and so. He may have said this about you. He will believe all of that, and he will be in a dark night of suspicion. I mean, he doesn't know what to believe anymore. So, a person is not supposed to think the worst of a believer. Okay? Whether these suspicions arise within you, or somebody comes and shares these things with you. If they arise within you, you have to suppress them and say, this is from the shaitan. This is haram. I'm not allowed to believe these things. Especially when there is no evidence. Or whatever you see can be interpreted in more than one way. Why are you choosing the worst way to interpret and then condemn your brother and sister, as long as there's another way to interpret it? Right? So as long as there is a way to save the reputation of your brother within you, that's the path that you take. Because after all, this is what you want them to think with you. Sahih? Exactly. You don't want anybody to... If you are in that situation, would you want them to treat you the way that you're treating them? Just think about it. Is it fair? Like I think that someone, for instance, someone is praying. And I think he's showing off. Someone is giving zakah, showing off. I don't have no evidence, but just comes within me. Sometimes it happens. He's showing off. But say, okay, do I want them to think that when I'm praying? When I'm giving zakah? When I'm doing, do I want them to think that? They have no evidence. You'll say to yourself, they have no evidence. What right do they have to think that about me? And I don't have. It's the same thing with them. What right do you have to think that about them? Oh, there's something bad about them. This must be from haram money. How do you know? Do you want them to say the same thing about you? So it's haram. It's haram. And so this is also a type of knowledge that we are supposed to learn, which is what? Not to have evil thoughts about my brother and about my sister. Okay? Or if I see them, for instance, have bought something, or, oh, must be from haram money, must be what? How do you know? Always think the best if you want Allah Azza wa Jal to gather around you people who will think the best of you. And if you hear unsubstantiated information coming from people about other people, shut that door immediately. Oh, you know what happened, you know what he did, just shut that door completely. If I don't need to know about it, why am I listening to it? Right? Like, what am I gonna do with all of this information? Nothing. Shut that door completely. You say why? You say because you want that other person to learn that they can't share that information with anybody. You want to teach them that they shouldn't be doing it. Because you know what? If they are doing that with someone else with you, they're going to be doing that with that person about you. Guaranteed. And you're feeding that pathology of, oh, I'm interested in listening to the trouble that is between him and his wife. Well, you going to help them? No, I just want to know. There's no need for shut that door. I don't need to know this. Shut that door. Oh, you know what happened to their kids? I don't need to know. Just shut that door. And that's what a seeker of knowledge is supposed to be. Even if you are a part-time seeker of knowledge, you elevate yourself above that garbage. And he says, I'm not listening to this. Because the barakah of whatever I'm learning is going to go away if I'm listening to this type of gossip. There are programs on TV that are just about gossip. Right? Publications that are just about gossip. I mean, nobody, I don't know if anybody buys them, but whenever you're passing by, I don't know how many aliens were spotted on Earth, right? With every publication, an alien was spotted here. The son of this person is an alien. I don't know. People buy these things, right? Because it's interesting. But I mean, it's so outrageous. I don't know who believes it anyway, right? How many people got divorced and back together, right? You're like, so-and-so got divorced, so-and-so got divorced. So that's interesting to some people. So we live on gossip, but you need to shut that door completely, especially where? In the masjid. Right? If you really, really, really want to do it, not that it's halal, but at least remove yourself outside of the masjid, for God's sake. Not in the house of Allah Azza wa Jalla. You're coming to the masjid, house of Allah, and you're gossiping. Okay. So your sin should increase. Because it's happening in what? A sacred place, right? This is the house of Allah, in a sacred place. So your sin will increase when you do this. So you need to remove it out. And this should be a place where it is safe for the believers to come and they worship Allah, and there will be barakah and serenity in it, not the other way around, not a place where exchange gossip with people. So he says it's not allowed. It's haram for a person to suspect another Muslim, another believer, and it's also to spread these is haram. Two more, a couple of, about 4 verses of poetry to conclude this chapter. He says, تَنَحَّ عَنِ الْقَبِيحِ وَلَا تُرِدْهُ وَمَنْ أَوْلَيْتَهُ حَسَنًا فَزِدْهُ. He says, remove yourself from any evil, okay? Any evil act, and don't seek it. And if you've done something good to someone, double that and keep increasing it, okay? سَتُكْفَى مِنْ عَدُوِّكَ كُلَّ كَيْدٍ. He says, you're going to be protected from the plots of your enemy. So if your enemy plots against you, don't plot against him. So he's saying again, rise above foolishness. So what is he saying is that stay away from evil. Stay away from evil. And if you've done something good, keep doing it. Keep doing it. As some people, subhanAllah, we're human. They keep giving, and after some time they complain. He says, I'm not seeing anything back. I'm not seeing anything. I'm not seeing any thank you. I'm not seeing any return on it. In time, inshallah, you need to ask Allah Azza wa Jal for it. You want to reach a stage where you're giving for the sake of giving. Right? Not giving for the sake of anything else that you're going to get from that person. Not even a thank you. Huh? So there are levels of giving, levels of teaching, level of companionship, where I'm giving, but I'm expecting something back. And yes, we're humans. And with some humans, you're going to have to expect something back. I understand. Your spouse, your child, you're expecting something back. But there are also with other human beings outside, right? That intimate circle. Friends or people in the masjid or whatever, right? Acquaintances, family members. Do it for the sake of doing that, what is good. Doing it for Allah Azza wa Jal. Whether you receive something good from them or not, ask Allah to make it irrelevant. Ask Allah to make it irrelevant. Because when it is irrelevant, you'll be able to keep giving them good and good and good lillah, for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. It's not going to end. Even if they're not repaying you. Even if they're not returning the favor. And what he says here, he says, سَتُخْفَى مِنْ عَدُوِّكَ كُلَّ كَيْدٍ. He says, when you do this and when you live like that, you're going to be saved from the plots of your enemy. So you don't need to worry about your enemy. If they plot against you, you don't need to plot against them. Allah will plot for you. As Allah Azza wa Jal says, وَكَذَلِكَ كِدْنَا لِيُوسُف. So we have plotted for Yusuf. Right? So Yusuf, you understand what happened to Yusuf alayhi salam, right? He went through so much with the plots of his brothers. But he did not plot against them. And he did not want to harm them. That's the ideal story of people harming you, but you don't really want to harm them. You just want them to find out what they've done that was wrong and repent from it. So that's once they repented from it, he invited them and their families to Egypt, and he welcomed them with open arms and gave them whatever they needed. So they actually benefited from Yusuf. He never harmed them. But who plotted for Yusuf? Allah. كَذَلِكَ كِدْنَا لِيُوسُف. So he didn't have to sit, how am I going to trick this person and punish this person? And there are like 11 of them, 1, 2, 3. He didn't have to do this. He says, this is how we're going to plot for Yusuf. So Allah will plot for you. Allah will save you from your enemy's plot if you are good. You don't have to worry about it. Somebody hurt me. How do I hurt him? No, don't hurt. Somebody harmed me. What do I do to avenge? No, don't worry about that. Be good and rise above those petty feelings, those hurt feelings, and Allah Azza wa Jal will take care of you. And the last one, he says, ذُو الْعَقْلِ لَا يَسْلَمُ مِنْ جَاهِلٍ. And he says, the wise person will never be safe from an ignorant person. يَسُومُهُ ظُلْمًا وَإِعْنَاتًا. He'll burden him with injustice and difficulties. He says, you'll always have someone foolish, maybe, may Allah save us from that, but you always have somebody foolish who will burden you, he says, with injustice and with difficulty. He says, فَلْيَخْتَرِ السِّلْمَ عَلَى حَرْبِهِ. Let him choose peace instead of conflict with him. وَلْيَلْزَمِ الْإِنصَاتَ. Okay, and let him be quiet. Insata. If he shouts. So if that foolish person starts shouting, he says, don't shout back. That's what we said. Don't shout back. بَلْ يَلْزَمِ الْإِنصَات. Meaning just be quiet so that you would, choose peace rather than conflict. So like a person knows when to choose, you know when to choose your battles and what battles to choose, right? So not every argument is worth it. Not every discussion is worth it. Not every person is necessarily worth having a discussion with. Sometimes it's just enough to listen and then move on. But save your energy for what matters, right? So, inshallah, so let's not get into the next chapter. So I'm thinking, Allah alam, let's see. Maybe we'll have one session or 2 more sessions, inshallah, we'll see with this. So let's see, inshallah, if you have questions, or if no, you can get ready for Isha. نعم تفضل. Al-Khadr, نعم, Al-Khadr, they disagree about him.